our good old buddy Ryan Hoyle, one of our favorite drummers, at your new studio. This is Cave 2.0, I guess?
2.0.
Cool.
V2.
I like it. I like what you've done in here.
Thank you.
You've been using Mojave mics a long time.
Yep.
And have a lot of experience with them. So let's start with the tube, the MA200 versus the 201 FET on overheads. So what's going on with that? I see the 201 FETs are up today.
Yeah. I go back and forth. I think both have a voice, a very different voice, but a very good voice. You know, quite frankly, it's like the tubes are for more vintagey thing.
Right.
I like the FETs though because they're clear. They kind of let me change drums and let me change cymbals and let me do different setups, and they represent kind of what it is. I like the aggressive nature of them.
Right.
I find that they make the drum kit really speak and sound exciting, and they're big. The other thing about the 201 FETs I like is that they're nice and wide. They can tend to make a room sound bigger, in my experience. So I've been using the 201 FETs a lot on overheads for, I don't know, maybe about a good year now. But if I'm going for something deliberately more indie or vintagey, I'll put the tubes up.
We'll swap them out.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think that, you know, the other thing I like about the FETs is that they just kind of rock, you know, which I like rock.
Right.
And they'll take really high SBL. You can really beat up on them, and they stay true.
They interact with the preamp nice.
Yeah.
Right. Cool. What preamps do you have them running into?
I have the overheads going through some old RCA BA71s.
Oh, nice. We kind of threw you a curveball today. We brought in one of our new 101 FETs that we have over the kit in Omni.
Yep.
You had a 414 there. And was the 414 in Omni as well?
Yes.
Right. So what's that giving you?
Well, you know, I always saw, I mean, frankly, snare drum.
Right.
You know, there were certain things I like about XY, miking in XY. And I like the way that the snare drum turns out in XY, but I also really like the width I get from a spaced pair.
Right, XY you don't get the width.
Right.
You get the center image.
And now that I have a nice ceiling height, I can afford to go a nice spaced pair, get them wide, get them high.
Right.
But, I got it from two different places. I got it from looking at pictures of John Bonham. Every time I saw John Bonham in the studio, he had three overheads. It was never a spaced pair.
Right.
He always had one in the middle.
Right.
All the pictures I've seen. And then from Ross Hogarth, you know, Ross has always told me, you know, I never used two overheads.
Right.
He didn't really tell me a whole lot more than that, but I kind of put it together by watching these pictures of Led Zeppelin and thinking to myself. And then I just tried it one day, and I measured things out to make sure that they weren't going to step on each other, phase-wise. And I really like it, and the producers and the engineers I've been working with have all come in and said, I'm going to start doing that. You know?
Yeah.
Well, I feel like if I can try to get a nice drum sound in the overheads, that in my mind is a good thing. And if people want to get rid of that, then that's their option to roll it up and get rid of the drums.
Right.
You know, you can always high pass and
thin them out.
But I'd rather start with a nice thick drum sound in the overheads and hopefully something that when you solo it, you go, wow, there's your drum
We're
mix.
there. We're pretty close to being there.
That's my goal,
Right.
at least, to have overheads.
So that's how you start, is with the stereo pair. You get a nice image, then everything needs to fit in with that.
Yeah, I feel like it's...
Do you check the phase against the overheads, or do you start with the kick drum or snare? Or where do you start?
Well, I would start with the overheads and getting them right get the imaging right with the snare and make sure that the snare's in the middle.
Right.
And then I would make sure that they sound right with your crash cymbals.
Right.
So one crash cymbal's not dominating and one doesn't, you know. And then I would really, depending on the song, I would really try to push the hi-hats a bit and slosh them out and see how they're going to react. Because I've learned that overhead mic placement's really funny. You know, an inch this way and the hi-hats will get out of control.
Right.
And an inch that way and they're really beautiful and sit right.
Right.
So I personally, I'm not that I'm the Ross Hogarth or anything, but I would start with the overheads. I think it's, and then once that's sounding great, and make sure the floor tom's not getting lost.
Mm-hmm.
That's a real easy thing to happen. It's like the rack sounds great, the snare sounds great. Now what about the floor tom? It sounds like it's in next door.
Right.
So I try to get the toms sounding nice and balanced in the overheads. And then when that happens, I think the next step is bring in the snare and work with the phase on the snare. Figure out where it lies phase-wise. Do you need to reverse the phase? Do you need to move mics?
Right.
And then once you have overheads and snare, usually the kick will follow suit because you're going to be rolling up some low end anyway.
Right.
And then I'll work with the kick drum in itself. There's 3 mics there. We want to make sure they're phase coherent. And then once I have the kick, snare, and overheads happening, then I would work probably with the room mics and make sure that they're not going to phase out what we've established already with our quote unquote close mics.
Right.
And then, you know, the rest is pretty easy. You bring in the toms and the hat and